Well, today we're going to talk about this happened last month, and Tom, a friend of mine, sent me a link, and I watched it on YouTube. And at the end, I will show you a link where you can go and watch it. But it's where the king and queen went to the Vatican in the Sistine Chapel, and they met with the Pope. And in here, I'm going to talk about I have a lot of screenshots from that video. In fact, a good share of it is screenshots. Then I have some Ellen White quotes, and I also am going to go and show you some books, a couple books that what they say about the Vatican and the Jesuits and all these people. Some of those things, most people in America have no idea uh, of the things that goes behind the scenes. So we're going to start out with Matthew 22:21. And I put this as an example of separation of church and state. Most people don't see this as a separation of church and state. They say unto him, Caesar's. Then say unto them, render therefore unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. In other words, they're separate, and we need to keep them separate. And here's what Mrs. White says about it. The discrimination is emphatically brought out by our Lord in the injunction, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. Within the sphere of civil relations, Caesar is supreme. Within the sphere of moral and religious duties, God alone is supreme. And so there's a separation there. And so also it is the duty of children to obey their parents and wives, their husbands, and servants, their masters, each according to his sphere and its limitation. And I put a picture in here. On the left, you see there's the Caesar coin, and on the right, the things that are God's, and they must be kept sacred, separated. Now, no, there is a few people that was talking about this, Vim, but not a lot. This is from Reuters. King Charles and Pope Leo prayed together in a 500-year first. October 23. King Charles and Queen Camilla make state visit to Vatican. First joint prayer between a pope and British monarch since 1534. Moment seen as healing of history. King given special wooden seat at Catholic Basilica. And that there does not sound like it's a comfortable seat to sit in. Visit to the Vatican's healing of turbulent history. The King and Queen Camilla are on a state visit to the Vatican, marking the closening ties between the Catholic Church and the Anglican community, 5 centuries after their turbulent separation. There is a strong sense that this moment in the extraordinary setting of the Sistine Chapel offers a kind of healing of history. The Reverend James Howley, Canon Theology of Westminster Abbey, told Reuters. Canon theology, and if people know what the ecological canon is, that's the law that governs the Catholic Church. Here's another article. This is from the BBC. Today's prayer at the Sistine Chapel, attended by King Charles and Pope Leo, marked the first time the Supreme Pontiff and the Roman Catholic Church and their Supreme Governor of the Church of England have prayed together since the Reformation in the 16th century. The events are being hailed by some within the church as a great step forward in unity. And Mrs. White talks a lot about the unity of the churches. And according to the king's spokesman, were intended to strengthen ties between the religious groups in a challenging world. And so I've got a bunch of pictures here, and this is screenshots that I took on here. And you can see there's bishops and there's cardinals, and you'll see more pictures. First of all, we're going to talk about this book called The Vatican Assassins. And I'm going to go over this a little bit. We have 3 or 4 quotes from him. The Vatican Assassins by Eric John Phillips White. And here's his title. He's a white separatist, American freeman, dispensational, Fifth Monarchy, Seventh-day Baptist, Calvinist. Now, I met him when he spoke, I believe was at the conspiracy conference. Afterwards, I went over to his table where he was and bought his CD with his book on it. And in that, when you buy this CD, there's 13 rare books, some of them out of print. That's also in this here. Well, he took off with some other people, so I spent some time talking to his wife, quite some time. Found out, different things about him. Gave her some information that I had from my Fresno group. And when I sent out my Daniel 8, my things that I sent out once a month, Daniel, the relationship between Iran, Israel, and America, she is on that list. She has been for 20 years. So whether she reads them, I don't know, but it was an interesting conversation. I also spoke to Sandy's dad about him. Sandy's dad, John, he was going to invite him. He had thought about inviting him to speak at Bible Explorations. This was, of course, 20 years ago. I'm going to quote some things from this book. It's almost like he was reading from Ellen G. White. The fact is that very few Protestants have realized how entirely Rome is a political church, and that she always makes her political advancements her first object. Now, Rome is perfectly consistent in her demand for the control of civil government. If her teaching were true that there is no salvation outside the church, she is bound to compel all to belong to the church, even if she has to call in the civil power to help her enforce submission. This power she has ever invoked and utilized. And what that is saying is in the United States that the religious power has to have civil power to help enforce its what they want to enforce. And you see there, help her enforce submission. Very interesting word that he uses there, submission. And this is it's from the Vatican Assassins, but it's also from this Cusack, 1896, a converted nun, talking about the Black Pope, which is not the Jesuit Pope. And this here is also from that book, from his CD. When the United States rules the world, the Catholic Church will rule the world. And that's from Archbishop Quigley in 1903. And so, do we have proof of this in the Bible? We sure do. Revelation 13. And I beheld another beast come up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. And he exercises not some, he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth of them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. So here we have the United States causing everybody to worship the Vatican. And so when you see these quotes like this, when you go to the Bible, you can see that the corresponding quote from the Bible is there. Now from Mrs. White. In order for the United States to form an image of the beast, the religious power must so control the civil government that the authority of the state will also be employed by the church to accomplish her own ends. In other words, the Catholic Church will cause the state to do the things that the Catholic Church wants them to do. And we'll see some examples of that shortly. Here we go back. I got two pictures here. The bishop is in purple, and the cardinals is in red. Okay, now if you look to the right, and when I did these screenshots, it was not just to get the pictures of the cardinals and the bishops, but it was to get what was written over on the right. The service will see the king made royal confrater of the Abbey of St. Paul's outside the walls. And I did not know what a confrater was, and I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it correct, but you can read it there, and we will go in and see what it says. This is in the book, The Vatican Assassins. If you looked over here, most of these are the Knights of Malta. And you see the number one, Francis Cardinal Spellman, Archbishop of New York, of Columbus. He is called the military vicar. And we will go and look, is that actually true? We will look and see if he was the military vicar. He was also Knights of Malta. You go and look through here. Knight number 3, Knights of Malta. 4, a Dame of Malta. John F. Kennedy. We talked about him being a Catholic, but he was a Knight of Columbus, and he was Spellman's Key, Knights of Malta. You go through almost all of these were Knights of Malta. When you look at number 12, it says here he was a Jesuit coadjutor. And so in his book, he talked about a conjointer, however you pronounce it. There was one other person in here that was also a conjointer, I believe. Anyway, continuing on. Here is the definition that I found on it. The Latin word frater, brother, confrater, implies a fellow brother, someone who shares a companionship or fellowship, especially spiritual. The prefix royal indicates that the person is a member of the fellowship, confraternity, with royal status. So apparently they gave him a royal status also in this here. Continuing on this here in the Vatican Assassins. The secret of the Jesuits is that Loyalta, their founder, who sought from the beginning to make Jerusalem the capital of his order, and his cronies adopted Machiavelli's, which is The Prince, a book therein politics is completely divorced from morals, as their textbook. Everything Jesuit, including fascism, is unavoidably that word. And that comes from a book called The Great Silence Conspiracy, which is in that. And I have talked about the Vatican moving to Jerusalem for a long time. Here's two texts where I talk about that, Daniel 8:9 and Daniel 11:45. Out of one of them came forth a little horn, which we have always said was the Vatican, which waxed exceedingly great toward the south and toward the east and toward the pleasant land, which is Jerusalem. And then in Daniel 11, and he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy ground. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. And if you have seen that some of the people today have talked about Gaza and stuff being and Israel being between the seas. Here is a video shot of the king and his wife Camilla walking towards the front. And previously, in previous presentations, I've also mentioned that they have designated, Pope Francis has designated 2025 as a Jubilee year. So on this day, a king joined her being the Vatican. And we will go through and then in Revelation 18 and look. For all nations have drunk the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. So here I'm talking about King, um, the king of and his wife are joining the Vatican. Therefore shall her, and then later in this chapter, therefore her plague shall come in one day, death and mourning and famine. And she shall utterly be burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. And when we was up in Washington, I talked about this, these burning with fire and brimstone. And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived delicately with her shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning, standing far off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. And them joining the Vatican, I believe that is the first of other kings that's going to make their way there in the very near future and do the same thing. Let's see here. Coming back here. Royal spokesman, His Majesty is greatly looking forward to meeting Pope Leo and celebrating the historical significance of this visit. The service will celebrate the ongoing work towards unity and cooperation among different Christian churches. So it's not just his church, it's different churches. Going to be more is going to be joining. The service will see the king made royal confrater of the abbey at St. Paul's outside the walls. And now I included in this video, you'll see pictures because the Sistine Chapel is full of pictures everywhere. And I believe this is where the disciples are pulling the fish up onto the boat. Of course, I think that the boat that they have was a little bit bigger than these boats that they have in this picture. Then they have this here painting of the Last Judgment. The person that painted this, I guess he believes that a lot of the people at the time of the end aren't going to have clothes on. I found this kind of interesting. And there is, I put this up, God and Adam. That is supposedly God touching the finger of Adam to give him some type of power or something or another. And this you can tell was before sin. Back to this here. The king and queen have began a 2-day visit to the Vatican. And you can see them down there. There's the picture up there on the wall of the fishermen, the apostles doing the fisherman stuff. They are due to meet Pope Leo at the Apostolic Palace and attend a special economical, I can't say that right, I mispronounce it, service in the Sistine Chapel. So this is exactly what Ellen White talks about, that they're people, the church is joining up with them. Of course, she talks about when the United States will join up there. Is that going to be extremely soon? It might be. And this here, the king and the pope will publicly pray together during a service. The first time a British monarch and pontiff have done so in 500 years. And there you can see, looking over the shoulder, there is somebody drawing a picture of what is going on there. And there you can see the walls. You can see all the pictures Pictures are all over the wall there. And then you can see the 4 chairs in front. The left two are from the Pope and somebody else with him. And the right one is for the king and his wife, which you'll see shortly. And here is the king and his wife. And then there's the Pope and his friend that's up there in front. Now going back to the Vatican assassin. He has a quote, and this quote is from a Spanish Jesuit. It's in the book The Fiery Jesuits from 1667. In these last days, God has spoken to us by his son Ignatius, whom he has appointed heir of all things, by whom he has made the world. And this is what John put in his book there. This is a corruption of the passage of Holy Scriptures found in the letter to the Hebrews referring to Jesus the Messiah. So I went and found that Hebrews 1 verses 1 and 2, which is where this comes from. God, who in sundry times and in diverse manners spoke in time past to his Father by the prophets, hath in the last days spoken unto us by his Son, whom he hath appointed heir to all the things, by whom he has made the worlds. So what they have done, they have said, put in the Ignatius, and I can't pronounce his name, but he's the one that started the Jesuit church, or the Jesuit organization. And it's a letter to the Hebrews referring to Jesus the Messiah. Give me gold, plenty of gold, and then with such able heads, such resources as the church commands, I will undertake not only to master the whole world, but to reconstruct it entirely. And this is in a book, The Jesuit Conspiracy, from 1821. And yeah, they want to master the whole world. But there's going to be a little small group of people that's going to say no. We've talked about that. And here you see when the Pope and his entourage comes up there, you can see him bowing down. And I wanted to show this because when a few months ago, my wife and I went to a funeral. Willie, one of my wife's friends, he passed away and was in a Catholic church. And every time one of the officials walked by the front, they faced to the front of the church and they bowed down. And in front of the church in the wall was a picture of Jesus on the left, in the center, or God the Father on the left. Jesus was in the center, and Mary was on the right with a dove floating up above. They all bowed down each and every time they went by there. They did this also there. And I got a screenshot of them doing that. And you see here they're up. They all have their songbooks and they're singing. I'm not sure that those are songbooks. I assume that they are. They could be a description of the program that they're supposed to follow also. Here's another quote. This is from one of those books called The Footprints of the Jesuits. The members of this society are numerous and powerful in the United States. When you hear anybody talking about them being numerous and powerful in the United States, no, they have neither country, nor homes, nor families, nor friendships beyond the limits of their order. None of the affections of the heart which give charms and life to social intercourse, being required to abandon all these and fit themselves for uninquiring obedience to their general, whose commands, whether right or wrong, good or bad, they have solemnly vowed to execute without the least regard for consequences. And this is from a quote from 1894. It's in that book, The Footprints of the Jesuits. And then here at the back, they have some looks like they're kids. Anyway, it's a choir from the Vatican that's singing there. How do I know they're from the they're from, look at their it's I believe it's the way that they're dressed. And then here's another picture of an older group that's also came in and was singing Catholic hymns. A picture of the Pope. Okay, this here is comes from, let's see, this comes from a different book, which I will talk about short when we get to the next page. Of Cardinal Spellman's power in 1963, controlling the American empire's intelligence and military structure, we read. Does anybody ever know that Cardinal Spellman controlled the intelligence and military structure? Did anybody know that? Spellman, the military vicar of the American Armed Forces. And we will go and we will find evidence of this. The military vicar of the American Armed Forces was also the unofficial link between the Pope and John Foster Dulles, who was the Secretary of State, whose son Avery Dulles is a Jesuit, and therefore the Secretary's brother, Allen, head of the CIA. So we got Spellman, the military vicar. This is in the early 1960s. We have John Foster Dulles. He was the Secretary of State. We have his brother, Allen Dulles, which is the head of the CIA, and their son, and John Foster Dulles, his son, Avery, is a Jesuit. Well, we'll go and check this out in a little bit. The Catholic Church in the USA, controlled by the Jesuit order, is a force in the Pentagon. I need to get a drink. My voice is going. Is a force in the Pentagon, a secret agent in the FBI, and the prime mover of the Central Intelligence Agency. This came from somebody you've heard of, New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison, in a book, Heritage of Stone, 1970. I got it from the book Primary Target by Pamela Ray with James Files. This is in the introduction. And so let's go and take a look at who is Avery Dulles. Avery Dulles was an American Jesuit priest, theologian, and cardinal of the Catholic Church. Dulles served on the facility of Woodstock College from 1960 to 74 of the Catholic University of America from 74 to 88. And as the Lawrence, and it goes on, this is from Wikipedia. Continuing from that, although Jesuits make a promise not to pursue ecclesiastical dignitaries and do not normally accept promotion within the church hierarchy, Dulles was created a cardinal on February 21, 2001 by Pope John Paul II. And then it goes on to say on January 19, 2008, Pope Benedict paid a visit to the ailing Dulles, this is Avery Dulles, during his visit to the United States. So he was very important to the Catholic Church. And this here was it was on this Wikipedia article. So was Cardinal Spellman, was he a vicar of our military? Well, this here comes from December 24, 1965, New York Times. And the article is on the right. Saigon, South Vietnam, December 23, Cardinal Archbishop of New York and the Roman Catholic Church's military vicar to the armed forces of the United States arrived in South Vietnam today for a 5-day Christmas visit. So yeah, I found evidence that he was not the vicar, but he was at least a vicar for the United States. And let me tell you something else. 20 years ago, I had this article that was at one time classified. I got this article, and I wished I still had it today, from when I was at the International UFO Congress. And this here article gave Cardinal Spillman the authority to go into any military base above ground or below ground in the United States. Presidents don't even have that authority. At least some of them don't. Here's all four of them sitting there. And you see by King George, there's a guy sitting there. And I think that he's probably there to guide him through this ceremony to make sure that things go correctly. But that's just my opinion. Because when you see him bow, you see there's Christ on the cross behind. And then they have their thing of the candles up there also. And you see here, the announcer, when you hear the person announce on the video, the announcer said, "The union of two churches." And I thought that was very, very interesting. And here the union of intent. So when they was going out, they said the union of two churches, but then after that, they said the union of intent. So apparently it was just after that, when they was there, that they put the united them together. And this here is a picture of the outside of the Sistine Chapel. And I have another picture, I believe. But if you look at the top there, you see all the idol statues? They refer to them as statues. I refer to them as idols because they bow down. You can see them all around the edges. You can see all of the statues there. And there's the three of them with their official photo that they took afterwards. Some more pictures that I took in there. They're sitting at a desk. And you can tell the way they're sitting that this was a posed shot for the camera. And you see there's a right there, there's a box. We're going to look in that box here on the next picture. But he is showing him some of the things that they have there in that chapel. There's what's in there on the table in front of them. Here is where the people that, I guess this is all the officials, but they went and had a picture taken. And here is I assume that they exchanged these pictures because you can see them signing them. And if you want to watch this video, you can go on YouTube. It's on Sky News. And if you put in King Charles meets with the Pope, you can probably easily find it. So I put this here in here. What is the difference between the kings then and the kings now? And I got a quote from Mrs. White, and then I got a quote from Daniel 3 verses 5 and 6. That at which time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, the clamor, and all kinds of music, you fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up. And whosoever falleth not down and worship shall be the same hour be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. So back then, they did not fall down and worship the king himself, but an image set up. So what is the difference of worshiping the image to the beast, to the Nebuchadnezzar, and worshiping Nebuchadnezzar? And this is what Mrs. White says this here. It is one of the leading doctrines of Romanism that the Pope is visible head of the Universal Church of Christ, invested with supreme authority over bishops and pastors in all parts of the world. More on this. The Pope has agitated the very titles of deity. He styles himself Lord God the Pope, assumes infallibility, and demands that all men pay homage to him, which is the same thing that they was doing with Nebuchadnezzar. They was paying homage to Nebuchadnezzar through the golden image. And I did not put it in here, but there was a video I watched where people have said, the Catholic Church has said, well, the Pope did not call himself Lord God the Pope, but there is an article that these people on this video produced that calls him Lord God the Pope. So when Mrs. White says this, she is absolutely correct. Now, this here, I brought this up before, and people kind of laughed at me, because they didn't know, because they haven't read this. And I'm going to show you where I got this from. This is from the Protestant magazine. It's by it's by Prescott in 1915. Just a second here. We have reached a crossroads where we must choose either the path that leads to a new Reformation, which shall be revitalized and unified Protestantism, or the road that leads to dishonor and defeat, and bow to the triumph of Romanism, campaign to make America Catholic. And that there is, if you can see this here, this is a magazine that I got this from. And you can see it's thin. And so I contacted the people and I says, this here is volume 5, issue 3. Do you have any more books about it, articles? And they said, yes, we do. And I got this here. And this here, Make America Catholic. There's a lot of things that was in the papers back then that was talking about making America Catholic. It's almost like the MAGA today. It's very similar. First thing that I seen this, that's what it reminded me of. But this here is articles that they had in 1915 about the Catholic Church trying to take over the United States of America. And so I wanted to put this in here. This is something that I believe that we all need to be have part of our life. It's not the 10 Commandments from Exodus 20. It's from Psalms 19, 44 to 48. So shall I keep thy law continually forever and ever? You can answer that yourself. And I will walk at liberty, for I seek thy precepts. I will speak of thy testimonies before the kings and will not be ashamed. In other words, when we talk about these things before, we need to be forward. We need not to be ashamed. We need to be proud of talking about these things, not being negative about it, being positive. This is the answers. And I will delight myself in thy commandments, which I have loved. My hands also will I lift up unto thy commandments, which I have loved. I will meditate in thy statutes. And I found it, that's very important, because When we go out and we do our testimonies for Jesus Christ, we are his witness, and we shall not be ashamed when we take these things forward. Now I got this this is a closer up of you. I put up a Sistine Chapel with as many idol or statues, which I call idols. But these statues, you can see they're all over this place up here. And I believe that is it. Is anybody else? Did I put everybody asleep?
Not at all. It just shows how close we are.
Yeah, well, see, a lot of people don't know the effects that of that the Vatican has over our government. Um, the same thing with Israel. The not the prime minister, but the president of Israel that got assassinated in I think it was 1999. He was a Jesuit, and all the time he was over talking to the Vatican. All the time, he would run over there, and that comes from a man that I met called Barry Cormish. He was a journalist. I also met him at the conspiracy conference, and I went up and talked to him afterwards. He was a journalist from Israel, and there's some of the stuff that he talks about. He had to leave Israel for a period of time because some of the stuff he talked about, because he came out and identified that even though this president was shot, and everybody's, this was the guy that shot him, that he actually survived that shooting. They took him by car to the hospital. And when he says, if you look, you can't get those documents today, but he says you get them. He had a gunshot wound. It was one, but the autopsy showed two. So he says they closed down the emergency room, and he said he was shot again in the emergency room. That was from Barry Cormish. And that was one of the reasons that he was chased out of the country for saying that. Anyway, I did get a chance to meet him when he spoke. He was speaking about Iran and Israel, and I had some words. I went up and talked to him about Daniel 8, Iran and Persia and Daniel 8, and he had never heard of it. Of course, most people haven't heard of it unless they have heard me do my presentation on it.
Judy?
Judy?
Yeah, so Avro Manhattan wrote a book called Vietnam, Why Did We Go? And he clearly talks about the Catholic system's involvement in bringing that about.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, I mentioned to Sandy that soon after their visit, we went into war.
Yeah. Yeah. Abraham Lincoln, he didn't talk about it, but there was a Catholic priest, Chattaki. If anybody reads the book 50 Years in the Church of Rome, the priest Chattaki was coming out and speaking against the Catholic Church. And they went, and Abraham Lincoln became his lawyer a long time before he was president. And Chattaki told him, they're going to kill you because you defended me, because they found him innocent. Jack, I think it was that same book that he says, if it wasn't for the Vatican, that the Civil War in the 1860s would have never occurred.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like I said, Ted Gunderson told me before, many years ago, he's a retired FBI agent, says people don't read anymore.
Well, they do, but it could be untrue.
Yeah.
It goes so much, and there's so much fake, and the fake news has gotten out of control, and just even general stuff you wouldn't think about. You just used to be able to read it and think, oh, that's sad, or oh, I didn't know that. And now they do it, and it's like most of it's not even true, but it looks true.
Yeah.
The devil is is at work, you guys. We have got to be ready and share our messages, and his coming is soon and we got to be ready. This is getting crazy. But that was a lot of great information, kind of scary, but it was good. Thank you. Brent, were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to agree that the way it is now is they've over the last 100 years they've conditioned people not to think for themselves. So you, with the speed of the internet and things like that, and AI and Google, your opinion is based on the secondary opinion of somebody else. So
That's right.
they believe something, so you believe that. So you don't look into it. You just look at the conclusion and say, oh, well, yeah, the Earth is billions of years old, or oh, this or all that, because it's the popular belief. So your belief really isn't something you've ever. I mean, the way they condition you is that your belief will be based not upon your own thought, your own research, your own looking into a subject, but
A
totally on
reinterpretation.
the secondary belief of somebody else. And that never can be, I mean, secondary sources can never ever get you to the original, but that's what they do. So you believe what they want you to believe now, and that makes it all propaganda and all easy to condition people. And so you gotta throw the brakes on and throw a wake-up call in there and get people to think for themselves. And the only way you can do that is by proclaiming the truth, and all of a sudden that might plant a seed where people go, what well, I never heard that before. What are you talking about? So you just gotta be bold, like Keith was saying. You gotta be bold in the truth and not weak. You gotta be bold in the truth, because one thing about people is they don't like to be deceived. And so if they do suspect that they're being deceived, then usually that's enough to break that conditioning. It's like, okay, what do you mean? So it's just something but it's really been really, really, really through the media and through the way things are today, everything is about secondary beliefs, and that's how
Look at
you,
how many people believe it.
yeah,
So
and
many believe it. I mean, you go through the social medias and people say stuff, and I'm like, wait a minute. And there's one guy that constantly is saying, before you send me anything, no, I'm going to go check it. And
yeah,
every time I see something anymore, I go check it. I'm like, oh,
That's
that's not
right.
even true. Or they're still living, or that didn't happen, or they didn't even say that. And I cannot believe how much is out there, and just thousands of likes and, oh, I can't believe it, comments under them. And I'm like, this is going to happen at the end. And you remember where is it the Bible or Mrs. White? It says at the end they're going to say, I think it's Mrs. White. So they're going to say, why didn't you tell me? And they're
yeah.
going to get angry. And by then it's too
Yeah.
late, but they're going to get angry, and you can just see it. They don't
Well,
like to be
there's
deceived. And when they find out that their life is over in eternity and stuff because you didn't tell them.
That's in Revelation. It talks about when when the king of Babylon is exposed, the people get very angry with, is this the man that deceived, us, sort of thing. So, but you look at any war throughout history, and there's always an element of it. There's the guns and the bullets and the army, but there's always the element of propaganda, of either dropping pamphlets or, remember even with in Isaiah when they speak outside the gates and saying, this is what's going to happen, and they spoke in their language and tried to throw this propaganda out there. And that's what this really news has become today, is propaganda. It's actually an element of warfare. It's if you're living in North Korea, your news is propaganda. You think you're told you're living in paradise. So you have kind of two things about the internet. One thing is they can't really control it like they want to. So people that are living in North Korea can somehow still get the truth, not just the propaganda, But at the same time, people in like Western cultures can just live off that propaganda. They've got such busy lives. They just, it's just all instant information, and it gets more instant with AI. So, but the anti-venom for that always is to speak the truth in some way where people, where it's personal, where like you said, Sandy, where someone says, "What do you mean I'm being deceived about salvation or about this or that?" And that's the best antidote, is just making someone think for themselves.
Well, Thursday, up on my Fresno group, I say my Fresno, it's not my Fresno group, but I always refer to it. We was going over a document that Dave was preparing for his trust, and we was going over and changing words and stuff. And then someone says, "Well, that means the same thing." And I looked over and I said, "No, it doesn't. Look at the fourth commandment when it says that you're supposed to keep the Sabbath. They changed that one word, the, to a, so they can have all these other Sabbaths. Look at how many religious beliefs have came out of that."
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna turn off and back on the YouTube, so you guys can go ahead and continue. Give me a minute.